The best financial model in the world is useless if it takes you hours to answer a question, run a sensitivity, or update your inputs. Most FP&A models don't fail because the math is wrong. They fail because of poor design. I've built models for over a decade at Procter & Gamble, Unilever, and Squarespace, where I helped prepare the financial story for the IPO. And today, I direct the FP&A program at Wharton. So I've seen what works and what doesn't across industries and at every level of complexity. Now, I'm going to walk you through the financial modeling best practices that are distilled from the 3 leading standards in the industry. And more importantly, I'll explain why each one exists so you can actually remember them and adapt them to any situation you face. Modeling standards are documents that prescribe a specific way of approaching all aspects of financial modeling. And the advantage is obvious: standardization. That's especially helpful when you're working as a team and multiple people touch the same files. But there are other, I argue, even more important advantages of following the modeling standards. Financial models in Excel need to be robust, so they don't break when the inputs change. And of course, everyone makes mistakes in Excel. But the key is to build the models in a way that you can find your own mistakes before you hit send. And lastly, many people can build a complex financial model. But if it takes you hours to run a simple sensitivity, then you have failed. Modeling standards help you create Excel models that are robust, error-free, and optimized for fast iteration. So I studied the 3 broadly accepted standards for you and distilled them for FP&A work. Those are the FAST modeling standard, the ICAEW financial modeling standard, that's an accounting body, and the PwC global financial modeling standard. PwC is one of the big 4 audit firms, and they do a lot of modeling, especially in their consulting practice. I distilled from all 3 a relatively short list of fundamental principles, and for each one, I'll explain why the standard says what it says, so you can actually learn them rather than just memorize a list from some document. And when you understand the reasoning, you remember it faster, and you can adopt, change, and mold these principles to your specific modeling context. Now, before we get into the best practices, a quick note. Building a clean financial model is a critical skill, but a model is only as good as what you do with it. The assumptions you feed into it, the story you tell with the output, how you present it to leadership, that's where impact happens. I run a free live training called Steal My FP&A Playbook, where I break down the entire system, from analysis to forecasting to business partnering to storytelling, so you can connect all the pieces, not just the modeling piece. If you want to join, the link is in the description. Free seats are limited because it's live. Now, let's dive into the financial modeling standards. Workbook design is perhaps the most important aspect of building a financial model. How you laid out information across each sheet and across multiple sheets makes a huge difference for how easy it is to find information and how easy it is to update it, and how confident you can be that updates don't override any formula or create issues. Here's how the leading standards recommend you design your workbook. Separate sheets by purpose. You want distinct sheets for guides, inputs, calculations, presentation, and control. Each section has a different job. Your guide sheet handles version control and documentation. Input sheets hold your assumptions. Calculation sheets do the work. Presentation sheets are what you show to stakeholders. And control sheets run automated checks to make sure everything ties out. Color code or label your worksheets. For example, you might use yellow for input sheets, gray for calculation sheets, blue for output sheets, and green for quality control sheets. But, and this is important, you don't need to follow this exact color scheme. The point is to explain how your model works and then be consistent. Pick a system, document it on the guide sheet, and stick to it. Adding a prefix to tab names helps too. Colors can be hard to remember, so making it explicit with something like I for input, P for presentation, and C for calculations removes any ambiguity. Use clear and concise names for worksheets. Someone should be able to glance at the tab names and understand what they'll find. Calculate anything only once. Never repeat a calculation. That's just an easy source for mistakes. If two calculations don't align perfectly, you've got a problem. So rather than recalculating something, link to the cell that already has the result. Linking to existing calculations is actually encouraged because it makes it easier to see what the model is doing. A calculation where the inputs are visible on the same screen is much easier to understand than one where you have to jump between different tabs. Establish a sign convention. For example, you could say expenses are negative and revenues are positive. Or you could say everything is positive. What comes in positive, what goes out is negative. It doesn't matter which convention you choose, but it's critical that you're consistent and that you document it on the guide sheet. Now let's zoom into how you set up individual worksheets. Each column should have a single and consistent purpose. On a calculation sheet, if a column represents month 1, then every row in that column should be a month 1 value, all the way to the bottom. Now, for presentation sheets, it's fine to change what columns mean, because there you're thinking about how to design something for the viewer. But for calculation sheets, definitely stick to one dimension per column for the entire worksheet. All data, calculations, and outputs should be clearly labeled. Every row needs a clear, mutually exclusive description of what's going on. For example, in this model, we have original 150 milliliters, original 225 milliliters, sensitive 150 milliliters, and sensitive 225 milliliters, and so on for each product variant. Each row has a unique identifier. It might look prettier to just put original as a header and then list 150 milliliters, 225 milliliters underneath without repeating the product name. But while it looks more attractive, it means the rows don't have unique identifiers and you can't reference them easily in your formulas. When it comes to calculation sheets, functionality is more important than aesthetics. Calculation logic should flow from top to bottom and left to right. This makes sheets easier to navigate and understand, both for you if you haven't looked at it in a while and for others. Now, this top to bottom rule doesn't have to apply for the entire sheet, but it should apply within each calculation block. A calculation block is a self-contained section with one objective. Take the NPV sheet in this model. It starts with revenue at the top, then COGS below it, then gross profit, then marketing and G&A expenses, and then operating income, then depreciation, and finally cash flow at the bottom. Each row builds on the rows above it, top to bottom, left to right. Don't interrupt formula consistency with periodic subtotals. You might be tempted to insert a Q1 or year 1 subtotal between March and April, but then that column has a completely different formula than the months around it. It violates another key rule. Formula logic should be consistent from left to right. You should be able to drag your formula across without it breaking. If you do need quarterly or annual totals, put them on the far right of the sheet or handle all aggregation in your presentation sheets. That's what they're for. Don't hide sheets, columns, or rows. Transparency is critical. You may have to make changes under time pressure, or you might be in a meeting where the CEO throws a new assumption at you and asks, what's the impact? You need to be able to make the change quickly. If you're wondering whether there's a hidden sheet or hidden column you also need to update, it makes agile changes much harder and maintenance a nightmare. What is permissible is grouping, because grouping is transparent. You can see that rows are grouped, but even grouping should be used sparingly for things like notes and source information. Include units of measure, but don't clutter cells with symbols. Define your units in the guide sheet at the top of each sheet or in a label column next to each row. Don't put $signs in every single cell. Freeze the top rows and first columns. Your top row should include the time axis, and your first column should include data labels, units of measure, and error indicators. If you scroll down or to the right, you should always be able to see what you're looking at. You should be able to land on any cell and immediately say, this is the depreciation rate for sensitive 225 milliliter in month 8. Input sheets should be self-documenting. People shouldn't have to ask you what you mean or what inputs you actually need. If they have to guess, they'll make assumptions, and then you've got data consistency issues. Every input should be clearly labeled with what it is, what product it refers to, and where the data came from. Enter each input only once. This goes hand in hand with calculate anything only once. You want the model to be as simple as possible and avoid setting yourself up for version control issues. If there's a sales volume assumption, it lives in one place, the I Assumptions tab, and nowhere else. The calculation and presentation sheets link back to it. Now let's talk about formulas, the engine of every financial model. Use a unique formula per row copied across. You write your formula once, then drag it across the entire row. You use fixed and variable cell references, $signs, to make this work. For example, if a row reference shouldn't change as you copy the formula to the right, you fix it with a $sign. Only the column reference should shift as you move across the timeline. A quick tip, you can press Ctrl and the backtick key, that's the tilde key, to toggle formula view in Excel. It's a great way to quickly audit whether your formulas are consistent across a row. Keep formulas as simple as possible. That's perhaps the most important rule of all, because it allows you to audit your file easily and to find mistakes before you hit send. Here's a good rule of thumb. If a formula has 3 or more levels of parentheses or nested if statements, it's too complex. Another one I like, literally hold your thumb up to the formula bar in Excel on your computer screen. If the formula is longer than your thumb, simplify it. So what do you do when you actually need a complex calculation? You break it into multiple steps. Take the cash flow calculation in this model. You could theoretically compute cash flow in a single formula. Take unit sales times price, subtract unit sales times cost of goods sold per unit, subtract marketing spend, subtract G&A as a percentage of revenue, subtract depreciation, add back depreciation as a non-cash item, subtract capex. That would be a monster of a formula. Instead, the model breaks it into separate rows. Revenue first, then cost of goods sold, then gross profit, then marketing, then G&A, then operating income, then depreciation, and finally cash flow. Each row is one simple formula that references the rows directly above it. Easy to read, easy to audit. Don't embed constants in formulas, except for universal transformations, things like multiplying by 1 for logical test, or adding 1 plus a growth rate that you link to. Those are fine. But what you should never do is hard code a specific number into a formula. Say you know that in January, units sold will be lower by 500. Don't just subtract 500 inside the formula, because that constant is now buried. Extremely hard to find, and it will come back to bite you. Every assumption should live in an input cell where it's visible, labeled, and easy to update. Don't set calculations to manual. In Excel, you can go to formulas, then calculation options, and switch between automatic and manual. People sometimes set it to manual because they're worried a large model will slow down their computer. But that means formulas only refresh when you click Calculate Now. And it's very easy to end up looking at stale outputs without realizing it. If you follow these best practices and keep formulas short and simple, performance shouldn't be an issue. And if your model is still slow, the culprit is usually too much raw data sitting inside the workbook. Excel is not a good storage device for large data sets. If you have to use a lot of data, consider splitting it into multiple submodels. Reference nearby cells. You want to be able to see the formula, the result, and the cells it references all on one screen without scrolling. If a formula needs data from a different sheet, bring that data into the current sheet first by linking to it, even if the row's only purpose is to display that number logically. Why does this matter? Because if your formula references a cell on a completely different tab or on a different screen that you have to scroll to, you can't visually verify without jumping back and forth. But if the source data is displayed right above the formula, you can see it at a glance whether the reference makes sense. And yes, the link to the other sheet could technically still be wrong, but you only need to check that first linking formula once. If it's correct, the rest follows. A quick shortcut here, press Ctrl and the open bracket key to jump to the cell that the formula is referencing. Great for quick audits. Resolve formula errors in presentation sheets. On calculation sheets, error notifications in the cell are sometimes fine. You might even use them intentionally as a signal that data is missing. But on presentation sheets, it's your dashboard, summaries, anything a stakeholder sees, errors should never appear. The recipient may not be as close to the model as you are, and if they see an error, they'll assume there are others. It erodes trust in the entire model, even if the underlying calculations are perfectly sound. So those are the financial modeling standards you should be following in FP&A. And if you apply even half of what we covered today, your models will be cleaner, faster, and easier to maintain than what most FP&A teams are producing. But I want to be honest with you about something. I've seen people build technically perfect models, every best practice followed, every formula clean, and still struggle to get promoted. Because the model is the middle of the process, not the end. The end is the moment you sit across from a VP or a CFO and they ask, so what should we do? And your answer needs to be sharper than your spreadsheet. That's what I cover in a free live session called Steal My FP&A Playbook. 90 minutes, the full 6-part framework, budgeting, analysis, forecasting, modeling, business partnering, and storytelling, and how they work together as one system. There's no recording for this one, so you have to show up live. Click the first link in the description to save your seat. And if this video helped you, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.